Alright guys, I am back with another movie review. It's been a very long time since I've said that. I think the last one I did was Spider-Man 2, that piece of crap. But I've seen a lot of movies I wanted to do reviews on, I thought were good. But this movie, after watching it, I just felt like I had a lot of stuff to say. I've been telling a lot of people about this movie, trying to get other people to watch it. Just curious to hear what other people think about this one. This movie was very good, obviously. And before I get into spoilers and things like that, because you have to spoil stuff talking about this movie, let me just say that this is a really original story. Yes, it's similar to movies like Human Centipede and things like that, but it was still pretty original, you have to say. Especially if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. I thought the acting was great. It was really funny. Johnny Depp was amazing in this movie. In fact, I didn't even know that was Johnny Depp. When I saw The French Detective, I thought, wow, he reminds me a lot of Johnny Depp, the same mannerisms and whatnot. But when I saw the credits that it was Johnny Depp, I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. I think part of that is because this movie's kind of semi-indie. So you're thinking that it couldn't possibly be Johnny Depp, especially with no promotion. But it was, and he was phenomenal. Easily the best character in this movie. But yeah, this is a really good one. I think a lot of people probably passed on it because maybe the story sounded silly to them. I didn't really know much about the story going in. I had no idea what this was about. So I was really surprised, and I enjoyed it. So if you see Tusk, I recommend you check it out because it's not a movie you will soon forget. Alright, so this movie, it starts off with these two guys, Haley Joel Osment. How do you say his name? I don't know. But you got him, and the first thing I said when I saw him was, I see cheeseburgers. Because this guy has gained a lot of weight. And then you have Justin Long, and they're doing this podcast. And it's kind of funny because Justin Long, he disappeared for a while, it seems like. And I didn't really care for the guy because when Justin Long started, he was the nerdy, just like the shy, nerdy kid in movies like Dodgeball and Happy Campers and things like that. Like, he was the goof. And then all of a sudden, he's supposed to be the cool guy, you know, like in the movie Accepted. And he's still kind of like that here. And I don't know, I just don't buy him as that. The cool guy in the PC versus Mac and all that stuff. I just didn't really buy it. But he kind of fell off the radar until this movie. But it's kind of sad that this movie only had a budget of $3 million. It's still bombed. And despite the fact that it was directed by Kevin Smith and had Johnny Depp in it, it still bombed and proved that Justin Long, despite all of these things, still can't draw money. Even in a movie with a low budget and Johnny Depp, he still can't draw money. But I thought he was good here. He didn't annoy me as much as he usually does. And the podcast, the whole thing with that, I thought was really clever. It's called the Not See Party, like Notsee. So at the end of everything, they say, don't forget to join the Nazi Party. And I thought that was a really clever thing for a podcast. In fact, I felt it was too good to waste on a movie. Like, it should actually be its own thing. But anyways, they go around and they interview people who do stupid things on the internet, kind of like Tosh.0's Web Redemption series. So this kid in Canada, he's like the Star Wars kid, but with Kill Bill. He cuts his own leg off. So Justin Long goes up there to talk to this kid. He wants to interview him. And while he's there, he finds out that the kid has died. He killed himself, I think. So Justin Long is stuck in Canada, and he's got no show. And he's in the bathroom at a bar, and he sees an ad for this old man who he's trying to rent a room in his house, and he likes to tell stories. He's experienced a lot in his life, and he's got a lot of stories to share. So Justin Long contacts this guy, and he's trying to find the place. It's out in the middle of nowhere. And he stops at a convenience store, and these two girls, they're the clerks of the store, and they kind of had some funny dialogue here. But what was interesting about this is the clerks were Kevin Smith's daughter and Johnny Depp's daughter. So I guess maybe that influenced why he did this movie. I'm not sure which came first, but I thought that was a neat fact, I guess. I don't know. So he goes to the old man's house. And like I said, I had no idea what this movie was about. I thought maybe this old man, who's in a wheelchair, by the way, and he's reminded me a lot of Stan Lee, actually. But there's this old man in a wheelchair, and he seems really nice. I thought maybe he had this monster, Mr. Tusk, in the basement, and he was going to release it, and then it was going to go on a rampage through Canada or something. I thought maybe it was a monster movie. So I really didn't know. And Justin Long is drinking this tea, and he's getting sleepier and sleepier as he's listening to this old man's stories. And eventually he passes out, and when he wakes up, he's missing a leg. And the old man, he actually has a pretty reasonable story. And since I didn't know what it was about, I kind of bought it myself. Like, maybe he is telling the truth. He basically says a spider bit him, and the poison was rushing up his leg, and they had to amputate it. So they had a doctor come and all this stuff, and Justin Long's like freaking out. He's like, I got to use a phone. And then the old man says, the doctor stepped on that. And that's when I was like, oh, that's a little too convenient, you know. But they go to dinner, and Justin Long realizes that he's not being given drugs to deal with the pain. He's given drugs to immobilize him, essentially. And the old man gets mad about Justin Long's complaining to use the telephone and everything, and he stands up, and we see that it was all a big ruse, and he goes over and just slaps the taste out of Justin Long's mouth. And he tells him that he's going to turn him into a walrus. And I guess I don't want to spoil absolutely everything in this movie, so I'm not even going to go back to the Mr. Tusk story. I'm just going to keep moving. But he wants to turn him into a walrus. And Justin Long thinks this guy's crazy, but he leaves him alone for a second, and he finds his phone. So he calls his friends back home, the guy from the podcast and his girlfriend. And there were some minor scenes in this movie as well, with Justin Long having flashbacks to his girlfriend. That stuff I didn't really care about at all. I thought it was pretty boring. But there was some subtle things in there, like when he's talking about, his name's Wallace, and he's talking about how he's going to, he's now the new Wallace, and it's better than the old Wallace. And it's kind of like foreshadowing, like, well, he's going to make another transition to another new Wallace here in the future. And Wallace also sounds like Walrus, so there was kind of like subtle things like that. But he calls his friends, and they don't answer, so he just leaves a message. Apparently they have a relationship. So he calls his friends, and you're thinking, okay, he may have a chance to survive this. I mean, maybe he's gonna escape or something. And when the guy said he was gonna turn him into a walrus, he said that when you're in the walrus suit, you have to act 100% like a walrus. So I thought maybe he's just doing some kind of kinky, furry type thing where he wants to put him in a walrus suit and he's got to act like a walrus. I didn't think he meant actually turn the guy into a walrus. So the next thing you see is Justin Long on the operating table. This guy's stitching all this stuff, and then the camera pans back and you see Justin Long has no legs. So that's when you realize, man, there's not much hope for this guy. Like, what's going to happen to him? And then we see him as a walrus. And that's something I really admired about this movie, is that feeling I got when I saw Justin Long in full-on walrus suit. Because when it shows his face and he's screaming, and because the killer cuts out his tongue, it sounds like a walrus, and he's just making this screeching sound, and you see what's become of him, you instantly have this feeling of dread, like the hopelessness. There's no hope anymore. Even if his friends get there, it's too late. He's been turned into a walrus. There's no saving this guy. So this happens probably halfway through the movie, and by then it's like a hopeless feeling. And then you're just curious to see what his friends do when they find him like this, if they find him at all. And his friends are in Canada, and the police officer they talk to recommends this French detective who's been hunting a serial killer. In this case, sounds very familiar to the ones he's been working on. And that guy was Johnny Depp. He was great here. His flashback scene was actually really good, one of the better ones in the movie, and they had a lot of flashbacks. So he tells them that he's been tracking this guy, and he goes and he talks to the clerks that Justin Long talked to, and he kind of traces his steps, and they find the house. Now, meanwhile, this killer's got Justin Long in there doing all this weird walrus crap to him, like trying to make him swim, swimming naked with him, feeding him fish, and it was just really bizarre. But his final test is for Wallace to become 100% walrus. He's got to fight him. So the killer puts on a walrus suit, and they got to fight each other, and he can either die or he can fight back, but he's going to have to use his walrus abilities to fight back, which will make him become 100% walrus, I guess. So Justin Long is fighting this guy while Johnny Depp and his friends are trying to get in the house, and the killer just burst out of the walrus suit, and I guess he was just going to finish Justin Long off, but Justin Long uses his walrus tusk to stab him in the foot and then kill the killer. So he goes full walrus, and he kills this guy. His friends rush in, and they see him, and then Justin Long, I guess because of adrenaline maybe, I don't know, he's just screeching at him, and I'm not really sure what this was supposed to imply. Then Johnny Depp comes in and points a shotgun at him. Like, we got to just put him out of his misery. And Justin Long is still screeching, and I didn't know if that was him screeching like, I'm a walrus now, like, who are you people? Or if he's screeching like, kill me, please, put me out of my misery. I wasn't really sure what to make of this. Okay, so before I tell you guys about the final scene of this movie, let me just say once again, massive spoilers. I know I've pretty much spoiled everything already, but let me just reiterate that point here. I said in the beginning, if you're curious about this movie or interested in it, check it out. It's great. There will be spoilers in this video. I couldn't really do this video the way I wanted to do it without spoilers. I wanted to make it kind of like I'm talking to a friend of mine, telling them about this crazy movie, or we watched it together and we're just talking about how bizarre it was. So this review is more for people who have seen the movie or just want to know what happens. And I do that myself on occasion. For example, Human Centipede 1 and 2. I still have not seen those movies. I have no desire to see them. But I did read the plots online because I wanted to see what the fuss was about. And I don't really care for movies that are just disgustingly disturbing for no other reason than to elicit that response from a viewer of just disgust. But I know sometimes I get comments from people on my videos saying, oh, you just spoiled everything that happened. At what point did you realize this was taking place? Because it's pretty apparent from the very beginning that I'm just going through every single thing that happened in the movie. I mean, did you wait until the end to get pissed off that I spoiled the movie for you? I mean, you could have cut it off at any time. I mean, I'm not trying to sneak in spoilers and ruin movies for people. I've always felt that it's pretty obvious I'm going through everything that happened in the movie. Do I really need to say spoiler alert when I get to a certain part? I mean, seriously. So anyways, on to the final scene of this movie. We see Johnny Depp. He's pointing the gun at Wallace. Wallace is screeching. We don't know if he's saying, help me, kill me, I'm a walrus, I'm no longer human. We don't know. But it fades to black, and we see a year later, Wallace is living in some type of wildlife sanctuary. And he's still alive, and now he's just living as a walrus. Maybe he's accepted this new fate, but his friend and his girlfriend go to visit him. They give him a piece of fish. He comes out of his little igloo, and he cries a walrus tear, and that was it. That was the end of the movie. Now, I didn't really care for the ending. I felt like they had this great story, and then they didn't really have anywhere else to go at the end. They didn't know what to do with Wallace at the end. And it didn't really make sense. I think that goes without saying that this guy would still be alive a year later. There is absolutely nothing that crazy old man could have done surgically to him in the middle of nowhere that would sustain this man in a walrus suit for this long. I mean, that's crazy. Plus, you would have to think that it would be so much healthier to try and get that stuff off of him surgically so that he could at least try to live somewhat of a normal life, because you're going to have infections in that suit. How do the organs operate? We don't really know what's surrounding his body. There was that scene where he's swimming and his head kind of goes into the body. So we don't really know what's around him. I mean, it would be worth it just to try to save this guy. So, and plus, what sanctuary would take him? I mean, how did this not make big news? There was a lot of questions I had about the end. So that was the end of the movie. And I looked it up because I needed more information. I needed more closure. And apparently Kevin Smith is doing this trilogy of movies. And the second one is going to be kind of a sequel, I think I read, involving the characters from this movie. And I'm not really sure how I feel about that. I'm not sure what they could do, honestly. And then the third movie is supposed to be like Jaws, but with a moose. So I'm not really sure how I feel about that either. But as far as Tusk goes, this movie was great. I loved this movie. I didn't know what it was about, and I was just pleasantly surprised by this. I did not expect to enjoy it as much as I did. But unlike Human Centipede 1 and 2 that are just disturbing imagery and just pointless violence for no reason, this movie had a cool original story. I thought it was very clever, and the special effects were amazing. I mean, that walrus suit was phenomenal. So that's my review of Tusk. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Leave your thoughts on this movie in the comments, and thanks for watching.